Some places are saved by a single promise kept across a lifetime. This warm September afternoon, we walk into Ney Nature Center, a sweep of prairie, oak woods, and river bluff on the high ground above the Minnesota River, just outside the little town of Henderson. Come along with Free World Explorer through a family farm that was given back to the wild, so that everyone who comes after can walk it too. We are in Sueur County in south-central Minnesota, standing on a wooded bluff that rises above the Minnesota River Valley. The old river town of Henderson sits just below us on the far bank, and the highway from the Twin Cities runs south past these hills. Behind the trees, the modern world carries on, yet up here on the bluff the land feels older and slower than anything nearby. Long before it was a farm or a park, this valley was and remains the homeland of the Dakota people, who know this country as Mni Sota Makoce, the land where the waters reflect the skies. For countless generations, the river below carried travel, food, and life through these bluffs. Every path we walk here crosses ground that Dakota families knew intimately and honored as home. This stretch of the Minnesota River carries a heavy history. Just upstream, at Traverse des Sioux in 1851, Dakota leaders were pressed into a treaty that signed away most of southern Minnesota. 11 years later, the broken promises that followed helped ignite the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. And in its aftermath, Dakota people were forced down this very valley in a long and sorrowful removal that passed close by Henderson. We walk these bluffs mindful of that story, and with respect for the people whose homeland this is. The deep valley below us was cut by a force almost too large to picture. As the last glaciers melted, an enormous torrent called the River Warren drained a vast Ice Age lake and gouged this broad trench across the land. What remains is a wide, gentle river winding through a valley far too big for it, edged by steep wooded bluffs like the one under our feet. That old geology is why this ground rises so sharply into oak forest and prairie. In the 1850s, a German immigrant family climbed onto this bluff to begin a farm. Wilhelm and Sophia Ney homesteaded the original quarter section here, breaking prairie and clearing woods on the edge of a brand new state. Theirs was one of many immigrant farms rising across the river country in those years, and the Ney name would stay fixed to this hill for more than a century and a half. The first Ney home was a hand-hewn log house that Wilhelm raised around 1854, a sturdy structure of maple and basswood logs roughly 24 feet by 32. As the family prospered and built anew, that first cabin was not torn down but repurposed into a barn, and it still stands on the farmstead today. It is a rare survivor, a pioneer dwelling that has watched over this bluff for the better part of 2 centuries. The farm passed quietly from one generation to the next. Wilhelm handed it to his son Henry in 1884, and in 1945 it came to Wilhelm and Sophia's grandchildren, Gilbert, Ruby, and Flossie Ney. Around the old farmhouse, the family kept a full working homestead of barns, a granary, a corn crib, and a silo, the ordinary machinery of a Minnesota family farm carried on across the decades. Then came the choice that made this place what it is. When Ruby Ney died in 1990, she did not let the family land be sold and split apart. Instead, she bequeathed the farmstead and more than 200 acres to Sueur County, with a wish that the farm be allowed to return to its natural state. A further 80 acres followed in 1997, and a farm became a preserve. What we walk through now is that wish coming true, slowly, season by season. Old croplands and pastures are being coaxed back into native prairie and oak savanna, the plow furrows softening under grass and wildflower. It is patient, deliberate work, clearing what does not belong and reseeding what does, until the land begins to remember the wild shape it held before the farm. The trail dips off the open ground and into the cool of the bluff forest. Here the hardwoods take over, oak and maple and basswood rooted into the steep valley side, their leaves just beginning to think about autumn. Little wooden markers guide the way along paths that fall and climb with the slope. In the shade, the air turns green and hushed, and the river is somewhere below through the trees. Beneath one of the grand old oaks, we come upon a low wall of dry, stacked stone, fieldstone gathered and set by hand. Walls like this are the fingerprints of the farm years, rocks pulled from the ground so a plow or a scythe could pass, then piled into quiet borders that outlast the fields themselves. Now moss softens the stones and the great oak spreads above, farm and forest grown into one. Then the woods open and the prairie pours out ahead, a wide sea of late summer grass. This is the heart of the restoration, tall grass rising past the knee, goldenrod and asters burning yellow and purple, the whole field alive with bees and the dry hum of insects. A century of Minnesota nearly erased its prairies. To stand in a restored one, brought deliberately back to life, is to see a lost world being carefully rebuilt. Today, Ney Nature Center protects 446 acres of prairie, savanna, forest, and bluff, owned by the county and cared for by a devoted nonprofit and its volunteers. Miles of trail thread across it, open all year and free to everyone, alongside classes, maple syrup days, and children learning the land firsthand. Ruby Ney's simple wish has grown into a living gift for a whole community. For now, it is enough to keep walking. The afternoon light lies soft across the grass, the mowed path curves away through the wildflowers, and the only sounds are wind and insects and our own footsteps. There is a rare peace in a place like this, a farm that was loved enough to be let go, now offering that same quiet to anyone who climbs the bluff to find it. Thank you for walking Ney Nature Center with Fru World Explorer, a family farm returned to the wild high above the Minnesota River. If this quiet bluff and the promise that saved it stayed with you, subscribe and come along for the next journey. There is always another trail waiting and always more to discover.